those folks who are remote can participate in. And I want to ask Tolu and Giles just to say hi so that I can make sure everybody in the room can hear you. So please, go ahead.
Hi guys.
Good afternoon.
Yes, it's working. Perfect. Okay, very good. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Tolu and Giles, for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. For the folks here in the room, what we are doing in this session with our distinguished panelists here, we have a couple of our Fuqua alumni, entrepreneurs and investors, and they have graciously, in the true Team Fuqua spirit, agreed to give us some time during their weekend to engage with you, to share their stories, to take some questions from you, to let you know what their entrepreneurial journeys are like. I want each of you to know here that this is pretty common with Fuqua alumni. It's a giving sort of school, and so alumni participation is very key and frequent, and we're very thankful for Tolu and Giles for giving up some time of their weekend for sharing their experiences with us. So let me just do a brief introduction of both. Giles Shi, MBA 2005, is the chairman and CEO of BioResource International Incorporated, which is an agricultural biotechnology company based in the Research Triangle Park. They harness the natural power of enzymes to create sustainable solutions for the future. And they are the exclusive licensee of technology developed at another university, North Carolina State University. And they work with manufacturing, distribution, sales, and marketing partners around the world. Giles earned a PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics from Emory University, a Master of Science in microbiology from North Carolina State, and a bachelor's degree in microbiology from Cornell. And he is based in Durham. I think he really likes microbiology. So please welcome Giles. Tolu Oleru, MBA 15, is Vice President of Technology Venture Banking at Pacific Western Bank in Washington, D.C. Pacific Western Bank is a commercial bank headquartered in Los Angeles. They have offices in Denver, Colorado, and about 70 branches in California. They actually have a branch in North Carolina, in Durham as well. They provide community banking products, including lending and comprehensive deposit, treasury service management services to small and mid-sized businesses. Tolu earned a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Pittsburgh. And when Uday joins, I'll take a pause and introduce him. But from here, we will get started. Please welcome Tolu. Now, as we were talking this morning, we here at Fuqua describe or include in entrepreneurship not only new venture creation, i.e. being a founder of a company, but we also include corporate innovation, being a product manager at a big firm, financing innovation, being a venture capitalist, investment banker, angel investor. We include joining a startup. You need to have an entrepreneurial mindset for that, or buying an existing company or taking over a family business. All of these things require having an entrepreneurial mindset. And what you're going to hear from Tolu and Giles is a bit about their story. What I'd like the two of you to respond to is this question. How has your entrepreneurial mindset guided your career? We'd love to hear about how you evaluated business and career opportunities, how you took risks, managed people and resources to achieve your goals, anything else that you'd like to share along that question. And Tolu, I'll have you start first, if you don't mind, and then we'll continue from there with Giles.
Yeah, so, for me, I've always tried to follow my natural inclinations, which, as many entrepreneurs do, right? It's like, what am I interested in? How can I sort of grow from there? And so, I'm not going to age myself, but if I start from undergrad, we'll be here all day. So, post Fuqua, well, at Fuqua actually, my natural inclination was finance, right? I was interested in it, and wanted to really build that skill set. And I knew investment banking was probably the right path for me. Although it was super rigorous, I did know that I wanted that finance skill set. And again, tying into entrepreneurship, you have your inclinations, but you also, it's a little scary, right? It's you're a little unsure, but you just kind of keep going in the path that sort of feels right and really resonates with you, and hope that it works out. And I did investment banking for 4 years, and then wanted to move back home to DC area where I grew up. Wanted a lifestyle that was wanted a job that was more conducive to having a life outside of work. And then I reached out to my network and just happened to have found this role at Pacific Western Bank. And again, as an entrepreneur, there are times you have to pivot, right? And the things that worked before, won't work the entire time. You have to pivot and figure out what works best for you, and change strategy. And so, to be more concise, I think an entrepreneurial mindset has helped me in the sense that I'm always sort of taking the pulse of where I am and seeing, does this align with what I want to do and what really resonates with me. So that's my little spiel.
Thank you very much, Tolu. You mentioned a couple things which I'm going to come back to. I would like to pause for a moment and welcome Uday Kiran Shaka. Thank you very much, dialing in from Mountain View, California. And I'm going to introduce Uday for everyone here. Uday happens to be my classmate from the daytime class of 2006. He's the founder and CEO of Sentry AI, based in Mountain View, California. Sentry is a computer vision AI software startup building virtual security guards for businesses, enterprises, and monitoring centers. Sentry AI detects and recognizes people, pets, vehicles, objects, their behaviors, and also identifies when the activity detected by the camera is out of the norm. It alerts security personnel accordingly to let them take action and prevent any harm from occurring. We've had a number of people today, Uday, who've talked about AI, and so I'm certain there's going to be a bunch of questions from the audience about your experiences there. Uday earned a Bachelor's of Technology in Civil Engineering and Computer Science from IIT Delhi. Welcome, Uday. I'm going to give you fair warning like I did with Tolu and Giles. The way we're presenting this in the room is exactly the way you're seeing it on your panel there. The chat on the right, which says private, is not private. So let's, I just give you fair warning about that. Okay, the question that we are responding to, Uday, we're going to go to Giles next, but I'm going to let you know the question in case you didn't hear it when you joined in. How has your entrepreneurial mindset guided your career? And anything from how you evaluated opportunities, took calculated risks, how you managed your resources to achieve your goals, etc. We'll love to hear about that as a way to get the conversation started. All right, please say hi so we can make sure we hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate this time here. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, Giles, over to you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity to speak today, and welcome to the new Fuqua students here. You're gonna be up for a really exciting time, and appreciate the opportunity to share kind of my entrepreneurial journey. And when I think about entrepreneur mindset, a couple of things come to mind, and I wanted to share with you. One is the entrepreneur mindset is a learning mindset, and it's perfect for where you guys are, and kind of my background, as Stefan mentioned. I like microbiology. I studied a lot of microbiology all the way through grad school. I thought I was going to become a professor, maybe follow my father's footsteps doing that, but I had another opportunity, a fork in the road, right? And I took it, and this is where I am, and has really impacted my life and my journey. I've been running this company that I started with 20 years ago, BioResource International, and what has helped me to get to where I am and where we are has been a learning mindset. And what I mean by that is an ability to learn new things, learn new skills, do things that you're uncomfortable with until you get some proficiency in that. And this past year, I had a chance to coach some young student founders at Duke. And one of the things I told them, and I'll share with you, is that entrepreneurship cannot be taught, but it can be learned. And what I mean by that is that you can't just learn entrepreneurship from a textbook or from a professor or from a classroom. It has to be really experienced, right? And experience can be a tough teacher, but it is something that can be learned, and I have learned and been open to that. So the learning mindset is very important. There's a quote by a poet some of you may know, Rainer Maria Rilke. He talks about living the questions, and that's really, I love that, because it's about being curious, being open-minded, and asking the questions, and not always having the answers, but being open to those possibilities. So the learning mindset is important. The second is a visionary mindset. The entrepreneur, by definition, you're creating something that wasn't there before. And so that's going to take a lot of creativity, courage, and conviction. Sometimes all three at the same time, sometimes different ones in different measure. But there always will be people that resist that change and resist that vision for whatever reason. Sometimes there's a competition, sometimes they fear, sometimes they're jealous, but there's going to be that attack and on your vision. So the entrepreneur, that mindset is visionary. And this is the interesting paradox, though, because you have to be both focused and flexible, I call it. You have to be really driven on your vision, but you also have to be open to different insights and different opinions, because that will help you drive to the right market and the right service or product, right? And the third thing is the entrepreneurial mindset is integrative. And what I mean by that, it connects the dots. What I love, one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur is that I get to connect different ideas and people and thoughts. And I'm a scientist by training, but I've learned a lot about a lot of things. And what I've learned about entrepreneurship and about starting and growing a business is you need a lot of different ideas and concepts and people. And the diversity is key. And how to manage that diversity is also key. But the most successful entrepreneurs are ones that integrate the best people and the best ideas and make things happen. So those are the three things I want to leave with you. Happy to delve into any of those if people have questions. It's a learning mindset, a visionary mindset, and an integrative one.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Giles. All right, Uday, you are up.
What an interesting question, right? So, what is this entrepreneurial mindset, and how does it impact what you've done? I think at the core is exactly what I've heard from Tolu and Giles. It's a certain level of dissatisfaction with the status quo, right? And you want to actually do something different, and always challenge yourself to do something more. So for me, I think it has been a progression in that sense. Again, you described my background. So I have an undergrad in engineering and computer science. And what next? So that was getting the business education. That's why I was at Duke. And what next? So I did management consulting, saw large companies, small companies, and how you look at different functions. And what next is, I think, all about taking on this risk. When you're an employee, you're not really responsible for a lot of other functions, raising money, explaining the vision of the company to other employees, could be investors, could be customers. So when you're an entrepreneur, you really are doing everything. I think other panelists already mentioned that. I think this is literally where everything comes together. Your soft skills, your hard skills, your ability to understand people, motivate them. At the same time, internally within yourself, how do you maintain this equanimity with all these things going out in your flux? You have your ups and downs, and how do you still maintain and manage to do something productive? How do you create something out of all this chaos and so many severe constraints that are imposed on you? I think that the challenge is what I think kind of motivates me. So every time I think I've come to a point where I felt I'm not learning enough. I look at myself and say, okay, what else can I do? And the path constantly led me to take on another aspect of entrepreneurial journey. And finally, I'm here at Century, where I had to do everything under the sun to keep the company on a path to success.
Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure you can hear me now. Great, thank you very much. That's wonderful. Well, something that I've heard from all three of you is about the, in Giles' way he put it, is the learning mindset. And Tolu put it as always taking the pulse, which I interpreted as learning from the environment and then figuring out what's next from there. So Tolu, I wanted to ask you about this. Can you give us an example of something, maybe a career pivot that you've done, or a pivot with your business that you've done that, where if you weren't actively looking around and taking the pulse, that you might have missed that, not necessarily something someone told you about, but that you observed using your powers of observation?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I think about my most recent career pivot from investment banking to venture banking, and to be quite frank, right, what I knew was I wanted to move back to the DC area. Taking my pulse, right, in terms of, how I felt, what I wanted for my life. I knew being closer to my family was the path that I wanted. It sort of professionally maybe didn't make sense, right? Sort of leaving a pretty, a good job, well-paying job, where I'd invested 4 years and made lots of connections, but ultimately it wasn't something that resonated with me anymore. And, I think was it Giles who said, like, or maybe it was Uday who talked about, like, looking at what resources are around you. And I mean, I just talked to people. I just talked to everyone I could, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And by planting those seeds and just being very transparent in terms of what I wanted, one of my colleagues met somebody at some event who was hiring. And like a month later, I had a new role and I was back in DC. And so, the pivot, how I made that pivot was, like I said, taking my pulse and just realizing what I was doing was not really where I wanted to go ultimately. And then, sort of figuring out what was in my toolbox that I could use to make that pivot. And I made the pivot. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Appreciate that. I'd like to hear from Giles or Uday about how you've gone about attracting folks to join you on your entrepreneurial journey. Giles, you founded or co-founded, and you've been running your company for 20 years. Uday, you've founded, co-founded at least 4 companies that I can think of right now, and there's probably more that you don't list anywhere that you've done. I'm just curious from both of you, how did you go about attracting people to your vision and getting them to come along with you? That's something that we had a bit of practice with today. Everyone got up and shared a passion area that they're interested in exploring during their time at Fuqua, and then had an opportunity to engage with their classmates about that. And there certainly was some selling going on. I could hear it as I was going from group to group. You know, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm passionate about it. And ultimately, some of those might form a company together or be on a project team. So I'd love to hear, outside of school now, how have you, either of you, done that? And whoever would like to jump in can please do that.
Yeah, I can tell a very interesting story of this entrepreneurship, right? So when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be, I think, in my opinion, extremely humble. Like, you don't know where the opportunities come out. And I have the distinct pleasure of hiring 2 of my former managers into the company. I mean, you would never expect that, right? In a traditional setting, let's say you're at IBM or something, you can never expect, someone who is 2 levels above you to work under you. And that's completely possible. And it doesn't happen because because you're, how do I put it? It's not because of you. Let me put it that way. It's because of vision. So your job, I think, as an entrepreneur, is to present a vision, a compelling vision that attracts, everyone. And when the vision is compelling enough, and the trust that you can actually lead this entity, a company that you form, to that vision, it doesn't matter. The age doesn't matter. Gender, race, whatever it is, nothing matters. When people identify with that objective, everything magically happens. So, and this is probably also related to your previous question. Just be very humble, very open. Things happen in a very surprising way. I've had people who I never thought will invest in my company, invested in my company, very big sum of some that I never again expected. People who I never thought, would join the company, actually joined the company. Again, the path was very interesting. Just met to get advice, and they liked it, then became an advisor, became an investor, and then became, a member of the team. Just be very open and have a very compelling vision, and magic happens. Probably Guys also share his perspective.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would definitely second that, what Uday said about the vision. It's, if you set a compelling vision and a purpose for the company, that drives a lot of interest and motivation. And you can, if you do it right, you can get people that resonate and are in tune with that vision and that purpose. So it's really not about individuals, but about the team and about achieving that. The other thing I would add to that is culture is very important too. As a smaller entrepreneurial company, we're competing against very large kind of corporate multinationals, which has a very different culture. And some people like the big corporate culture, and others are attracted to a smaller entrepreneurial culture. And we've got about 30 people in the company, and we spend a lot of time talking about our core values, and everybody has like core values that they put on the board and put on the wall and so forth. But we try to live those out. We call it our grit values: growth, respect, and innovation and teamwork. And so it's, if you get the culture right and you get the vision right, a lot of things kind of fall into place. But it takes work, and so when we first started, nobody knew about us. We were hiring anybody that could, hold a pipette or hold a beaker. They did it, just to work in the lab. But as you get good at hiring people, there's a couple of things I'd look for. It's both the skills, but also the traits, right? And what I've learned now is that you can teach people and train them up on the skills, but the traits are really key. Are they good team members? Are they good communicators? Are they more about the the corporate than the individual. Those are things that are hard to teach, but when you see someone that has those kind of traits, and then the humility, the humbleness that they mentioned, that's really a good combination. And so we don't get it right all the time, and we try to hold people accountable, and we've had to let some people go that weren't fits, and we're continuing to, especially in this environment, it's very tough to get good people. There's a lot of opportunities in the triangle, especially in our space, in the biotech space, but we're really proud of what we've achieved in the team that we have so far.
Thank you both very much for that response. Tolu, you sit on the other side of this table, engaging with investors who are looking for funding, and I'd love to get any advice that you have for emerging entrepreneurs. How, one of the key questions that we get asked all the time is, I've got this idea, can you connect me to somebody with money so we can get it going? And I'd like to say, well, back up, it's not quite that simple. I don't have a magic list of people with money ready to wire funds to you, so we have to figure this out. But I'd love to get, from your point of view, some one or two pointers. How should someone prepare to engage with a banker, a venture banker, anything like that you'd like to share with us? Be interested to hear. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thanks. I think maybe it might be helpful to first sort of explain what venture banking is.
Thank you.
So venture banking really focuses on high growth startups. And I specifically work within the lending sphere. And when banks, or when you have traditional banks like mine, and then you have, venture debt funds that lend to startups. And, with our bank, and I think probably with our competitors as well, what we're sort of looking for, we essentially underwrite to the venture capitalists that are backing you, because startups don't have, they're burning cash, and they're likely not going to be profitable for a while. And so really what we're looking for is, who is backing you? Are they reputable? And hence why venture bankers, and in terms of venture lending, oftentimes they'll be looking at who's in your cap table. Is it an institutional name that we know, that we can rely upon, we can say it has a familiarity with, and we can sort of, make the case that, if you were to run out of cash, you have investors who have the capital to really come in and one, save you, and two, repay our debt if necessary. And so that's sort of what venture banking is. It's lending to high growth startups that have strong institutional backers as investors. And so, if I were talking to an entrepreneur or their CFO, certainly going to be assessing the product, right? Is this something that we think is, I don't want to say viable, but is there a need for this? Is there a market for this? What is the market? What is the potential market size for this, right? And like I said, right, who are your investors? How quickly are you burning cash? How much cash do you have? How quickly are you burning cash? Will you run out of cash before the debt matures? And then and ultimately we also look at the management team, right? Do we feel comfortable that the people running the startup know what they're doing? Understanding, if you're a startup, you might be in a new space, things might be new, but do we feel like the people in charge sort of have those core competencies to sort of navigate the uncertainty, right? And then certainly, not gonna say obviously, but we're looking at your financials, historic, and projections. And are these projections realistic? If you're going to say if you're going to go from, I'm making this up, $1 million to million in 2020 to 50 million in 2021. Is that realistic? And maybe it is, right? But is that realistic? And so if someone were to come to me, saying I want venture debt, it's really holistic. But I mean, to be completely frank, a big part of it is who is backing you, because ultimately, as a venture banker, we're essentially lending someone's deposits to you. So we have to be really careful in terms of the risk we're taking. And to that point, I think, like initially I said, there you have banks that lend, and then you have venture debt funds. And venture debt funds can take more risk, but just be aware that with that risk comes a higher cost of capital to the entrepreneur or the startup. So,
Thank you very much. I have no doubt that in about a year's time, some of the people in this audience are going to be reaching out to you, looking for funding.
I totally welcome it.
I saw a bunch of furious note-taking happening. Here's what I like to do. I like our three panelists to think about advice that you might give to entrepreneurs as some parting words of wisdom. But while you're thinking about that, I'm going to open it up to our students to ask you some questions. In front of just about everybody, there is a microphone, and if there's not one right in front of you, you can walk to the back and stand up in front of those two mics back there and just talk. But the ones in front of you, you just have to press the button and hold it to ask your question. So I know I saw some note taking, so I know there's at least one or two people who would like to ask Tolu, Giles, or Uday a question. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, I can call on you. And then, okay, right over here. There you go. Just grab that mic. Thank you very much. And just hold the button down and ask.
Hey, so my name is Neil, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Tolu, you're on the finance side, and then Uday and Giles, you guys are on the the innovation side of it. So one of the things, and even outside of entrepreneurship, how as two entrepreneurs, you guys started up multiple startups. How do you handle the different push and direction from your original vision, right? Because you have an idea, you want to push towards that, but you also need the funding to get things off the ground, and not even just from the banking side or the finance side, but also maybe from some of your other employees that you hire, they recommend certain things. How do you adapt to that perspective of it? Thank you.
So at least from my side, I think, first of all, that compelling vision that I talked about has to be your guiding light. So the way I think of it is, you see kind of a peak of a mountain, and you don't know what path is the best, right? So whatever is shortest seems to be great. You go there, and you suddenly see an insurmountable, gap. What are you going to do, right? So you have to again, trek back and figure out some other way to get there, or you have to build a bridge. You do something different. So you'll always come across surprises. But as long as that your vision is very clear, and it's something that is bound to happen at some point, right? That I think is what will propel you and the rest of the team behind you. So in our case, it was very simple. I see all these cameras everywhere. And today I saw people were watching them to make sense of what is happening. And I saw in the near future, it's just not practical. When you have 350 million cameras explode into maybe a billion cameras, you don't have billion people sitting and watching these video feeds. It has to be done programmatically and through artificial intelligence. So that was the North Star. But then to get there, a lot of course corrections on the way. And so that is what I think one has to be clear about. And you cannot be pivoting that particular direction too often. I think that will confuse everyone. That will confuse your employees. That will confuse investors. So I think once you have a very clear idea that this is something that is going to happen, and you have some kind of a wherewithal to do that, You just work towards that, and you do whatever it takes to get there. So that's basically how I perceive it.
If I could ask you a follow-up before Giles or Tolu, you jump into that. What you just described is the discovery phase that we were talking about here. Discover, develop, and deliver as a framework to think about an idea or go from a problem to a solution and launch a company. And so I'm curious, how did you, briefly, how did you validate that this space was ripe for the innovation that you're bringing? You had you quoted the numbers, the cameras are going to explode, and there's not enough people, but how did you validate that the way you want to address that problem area is a meaningful way to go?
Yeah, so I've always found this entrepreneurship to be so, bringing in so many paradoxical things. Innovation typically comes from outside. And so this validation is extremely important. So people who are inside, they're already adapted. They know what works, what doesn't work, and they keep, fine tuning that, right? The true breakthrough innovation comes from someone who is outside. But then you have the risk of whether you're solving the correct problem, whether it is solvable, right? So wonderful question, Stephen. So in my case, I had no background in security, but I had background in technology, in artificial intelligence and computer vision. So the second part I will come to is entrepreneurship is a very emotional decision. Something inside you has to really make it, surpass your rational impulses and make you do this. Otherwise, statistically, as you know, most startups fail. So you have to be irrational to actually take on the path of entrepreneurship. And so you basically start from the outside, typically, right? You're doing something that the traditional establishment doesn't do. And in this case, you have to get the validation. Otherwise, there's a very big risk as well, right? So in my case, there was an emotional part, which was a garage break-in. So my garage was broken into, and I lost a bunch of things. And I was surprised. Here in the Silicon Valley, there is a camera every corner that you look at. How could someone, brazenly break in and take stuff away and not fear that they would be caught? And so I actually went to the source. I went to the law enforcement. I asked them what's going on. How is this possible even? And the point that he mentioned, hey, there are many cameras, but nobody has time to watch them, was the insight I got. I said, oh, I know exactly how to solve it. This is where you need not people, but you need a software to actually monitor these cameras. And then I put it in front of the police officer, asked him, if I were to have software watch these cameras, do you think it would work? And guess what? He said, outstanding, and nobody has actually told me that it's possible. And guess what? If you are going to do it, I would love to invest, are you taking any investments? Okay. That was enough validation for me to say, oh man, this is it. I think I struck gold here. So I think you have to kind of come from outside, but you need validation from people who are inside, that they never thought it was possible, but it's now possible because you're bringing in a new tool. I think that along with this kind of an emotional need that you have to solve it, because you're an outsider, you always face these obstacles of convincing a 40-year-old industry, to do something different. So you have to go with this emotional perspective that, I've got to convince these guys, come what may. The kind of a missionary zeal has to be there, that however insurmountable it looks like, hey, I've got this new tool, you've got to check it out, right? So there's this emotional part, you have to, but again, you have to keep validating it with people inside to make sure you're on the right path. And you will make it step by step. There would be a few folks who are more open. You get them on your side, and then you create the momentum with that mass of people. And then with real validations, again, ideas are a dime a dozen, but now you need to show the proof that you are on the right path, and you have to bring more and more people along the way. And that's when I think you are on the path. You know that you're on the path to success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Giles, I saw you nodding the whole time. Would you want to react to what Uday said or answer the initial question?
So I'd like to respond to, I think if I understand Neil's question, and then also a follow-up on how to innovate to the customer's needs. So Neil was asking, what if your company, you're obviously raising funds, but if things pivot or things change, how do you maintain that direction? And that's a real life challenge every entrepreneur faces, because and Uday, you can appreciate this too, right? And I'm sure Tolu, when you have people that you're pitching to that are giving you money, either loaning or investing in you, they're investing based on a certain set of assumptions and a certain set of a certain vision, but oftentimes that falls short, right, on execution. We always have this joke that we know financial forecasts will be off. We just don't know in which direction and by how much. So there's no telling what will happen. And if you look at our early business plan, we were wildly optimistic. There's no reason anybody should have invested in us based on those financials, and we never hit those. But what we did do, and I didn't know any better, but it was the right thing looking back, we were very transparent with what we were doing. I mean, I had an accountant working with me on my books, even when we were just, two people working out of my parents' spare bedroom kind of thing. It was very important to be open with, okay, where are we spending the money? How are we spending it? What's happening? And the investors will appreciate that. They don't need to, and they don't expect everything to hit 100%. But they need to know the truth, and the integrity is very important, and that trust, and that's what Tolu was saying, that the management team is so key, because they want to know, the people that invest money in you or loan you money, is like, is this person going to steward this money well? And we're entrusting this significant financial asset to them. They need to treat it as their own, right, and be accountable to it. So that's very important, the transparency. And there's tough times. I mean, we had product failures, or we had customer traction that didn't appear. We do lots of trials, and the product would seem to get positive traction, and then the customer would say no. So we had to be very open with ourselves and with our investors. So that's I want to make sure I emphasize that point, is that the trust and transparency is important. And then shifting to kind of innovation and how we do this, I think also it's a lesson learned, because as technology people, I'm a scientist. I have a lot of scientists on my team. We love to invent things, innovate things, and like, what about this? What about this? And we all of a sudden have this, all these bells and whistles, and we take it to the customer, and they're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And it's like a technology in search of a problem. What we've learned to do is to be more, again, my earlier point about asking the questions and being curious, and finding out what the issues and challenges are that the customer or the market is facing. They may not even know that they have an issue, but as you engage in conversation, you think, okay, how does this match with what we can develop on the innovation? Because we know a lot about innovation, we don't know as much about the market. There's always more to learn there. So that's how we, ideally, I mean, we're still working on it, but ideally we want to be more customer focused and more market driven than technology driven. And we've come a long ways, but still more work.
Amazing. Thank you both for sharing that. Who else has a question out here in the audience? It's got to be at least, I can see over the monitor. Okay, yeah, please go right ahead. And please just introduce yourselves too real quick before you ask your question.
Hi, I'm Monica Vendatuli. Thank you all so much for answering our questions. One question I have, I don't come from a technical background. I was a reporter and I also worked in public relations before this, especially when you have an idea for a product that does require extensive engineering or just different technologies. How do you go about, first of all, like figuring out whether your product is even viable, and also secondly, like in particular, recruiting technical specialists to help with your project?
Whoever would like to jump in, please go ahead.
I can go probably. So I've been in this, business of finding a co-founder probably many times, so many iterations. some good experiences, some bad. So I can speak to that. So you're always looking for a very good complementary person, that you can be working with. Very, very important. If you have pretty much the same skill set as the other person, the net positive, it's not net positive, right? So you basically probably put in another 3 hours and you can get the job done. You need to have another team member who is very different, bringing in a different skill set. I think in that context, I think looking for a technical co-founder is probably the best thing, that can happen. So you bring in your idea, you bring in domain experience or your passion, your vision, and you find a person who is willing to bring the skills of the trade on how to build this product. I think that's basically where there's, again, some element of looking for that missing pieces and then bringing that 1 or 2 people to join the team. And the other part is all a connection, or will this person be with you through the ups and downs many times? And again, I've assembled teams that I felt were very good on paper, and we just could not make this work. People weren't able to steer in the same direction. So, and this is when conflicts arise, and you're not able to take it to the final destination. Even though the market was great, the idea was great, the team could not gel very well. So, and I think Tolu might mention this anyway. Many times when you're looking at the founding team, you're looking for that that kinship between the founders. Are they looking like they're together, they're all speaking the same language? And this is why there's a strong bias towards people who have some shared experience. They worked together in the past, somewhere, somehow. That gives you a lot more confidence that they'll be together, for the next, typical route to IPO is 7, 10 years. These people have to be together for that long. So they need to know how to work together. And so when you're looking for your co-founder, you're looking for those characteristics. Is this a person I can be with probably for like 7 years? And you see some, red alerts. I think this is probably what Giles also mentioned. You're better off not hiring, a bad person than, waiting and making sure you're bringing the right person on board. And I've found with experience that you'll always find the right person. You have to be very open, humble, and you're ready to bring on anyone who matches the skill sets and the mentality or the mindset. Age, gender, everything doesn't matter, but you will typically find that person if you're open. So that's how I would approach the problem. First, get your vision right, you know what you're doing, and then you start spreading that everywhere. And you will find a lot of people who come to you and say, hey, I'll fill this particular part. And then you do your culture test or your compatibility test, and then okay, this is the team. And then, of course, you test the relationship a few times before you're fully sure. I think that's basically how I finally came to the team that I have here. And even when you do that, you still have some course corrections, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line. It's all part of the process, I would say.
Thank you very much. Tolu or Giles, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, I would just say that it's a valid question because you've got if you're starting something that has a technology component, you want to have people with that skill set. But I will also emphasize that most startups fail not because the technology doesn't work; it's for other reasons beyond the technology, which is like the chemistry between the founders or some communication problem or something else. It's rare that, there's obviously certain cases if it's all about the technology and it doesn't hit its marks, then that's an issue. But I would say that it's more important to get the chemistry right. And you don't know this yet as you're coming into Fuqua, but you will learn a lot about working in teams and who the quant is on the team, who's a poet, who's the one that's going to do the writing, who's really good at that, who's going to be really good at the Excel spreadsheets and so forth. And the same thing applies to entrepreneurial teams. You want to find who the strengths in each team member. And it may surprise you. Like I found out when I was at Fuqua that I'm actually the one that they would go to write. I'm a scientist. I should be the quant guy, but I wasn't. I was the one that did the write-up. So what you do is you try to find people's strengths, and it's hard to tell sometimes up front, but the more you do this, the more you realize, okay, what you've got to have that good mix of good skill set, but also good. We talked about the team orientation and then being humble and being able to work together is very important. So that's the advice I would give, is that just being open to someone that's got a good skill set that's different from yours, but also someone that is you're able to work with day in, day out, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person.
Thank you. Tolu, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. From the other side, right? Sort of assessing before lending capital. I think it really is a combination of what Uday and Giles have said. If I look at our current and past borrowers, we have borrowers who either, were at a large corporation, saw a gap, and left with a certain skill set to try to fill that gap in whatever space they were in. Or we had, two or three co-founders. One was sort of the finance guy, and one was the engineering woman. But from my perspective, yes, it's great if the co-founders have experience in X space. But what would be a bigger red flag? Well, what would be a red flag rather is if there was some sort of discord or separate strategies, right? And so, I don't think there's sort of one answer. I think the answer is just cohesion, right? Are you guys complementary? Can you settle on a strategy and move on from there?
Thank you very much. I'm looking out to the audience to see, okay, I've got a question in the back. Please go right ahead, introduce yourself, and then ask your question.
Sure. Hi, my name is Kennardo Mitchell. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So Tulu, I think this question is more so specific for you, but the other two could chime in as well. So have you can you give a specific example of a high growth company that you've worked with most recently that embodied a lot of the compelling visionary thing that we've been talking about today, or you guys have been talking about today, and just why you thought that particular high growth company was successful, maybe in a short term, mid-term, or long term, and just what are some key things that you saw that you thought perhaps if there are any entrepreneurs in this room could kind of learn from and use to incorporate.
So I have an example. I'm not sure if I can actually say the name. I'm not sure if they've signed a release, but I'll just give you sort of vagaries. So there is a company in knowledge management, and the founder is a serial entrepreneur. He came from a large computer corporation, again, being vague here. And he left that corporation, founded a startup, sold it to the corporation he left, and has now founded another one that's investors are just throwing money at this thing. They have a line of debt out with us. They don't even touch it because they don't need it. They just have so much cash. And I think what has made that company successful is one, visionary. And I think this goes back to Uday's point about there being this emotional thing. I'm on the finance side, right? And so I'm sort of maybe more black and white. But even on the finance side, when we're sort of thinking about covenants and structuring a loan, we are mindful not to covenant a loan to the extent that it sort of inhibits what the company does, right? We don't want companies running their business to hit a loan covenant, right? That's not why you founded the business in the first place. That's not why you're going to grow. And so this person, this man, this serial entrepreneur, has just there's some emotional thing, there's some intrinsic thing that he's just been able to tap into and build teams, and he's been able to find gaps that no one else can. And in this specific case, in the product, it's knowledge management, but it fits in so well with things that already exist that the company, that their customers don't need to have to think about how am I going to implement this, right? It's like, oh, it's a plugin to Chrome and we can do X, Y, and Z, right? So it's a visionary aspect, it's the experience aspect, so entrepreneurship, but also the having a product that makes people's lives easier and is not super hard to implement. You just got to plug it and you're done. And it's so sticky, and the metrics are so good that investors are just like, I want to get in. And we're like, stay with us, keep borrowing with us. So hopefully that's helpful.
Very cool. Thank you very much. We have 2 minutes to go here, and I do have one more question. So here's what I'll like to do. Let's get your question, and then we'll get one response from that. Whoever would like to jump in can do that, or if there's a specific person you want to ask, we can do that. And then we'll say thank you to our guest for being here with us today. So please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach. Thank you for joining us here this afternoon, answering our questions. This one I think is going to be geared more towards Uday or Giles, but totally if you have a perspective on this as well, obviously open to it. How did you guys know when the time to commit to your venture was? I think something that I personally struggle with a lot is kind of the push-pull of wanting to start a venture, but also wanting the security of, a salary and a job at a company. And so that's something I've personally wrestled with. I'd love to hear your perspectives on when you knew the time to commit was and what signaled that to you.
I can go probably. Definitely, I was in that foot in each boat category for quite some time, and my perspective was you're not ready if you are doing that. You literally have to pick one, and that's the only thing that's gonna take you to success. And if you don't do it, no one else will trust you, right? So literally, the point where the venture starts is when you put all your personal passion, energy, commitment to one idea, and that can happen at any point. So because the idea is so great, compelling, your financial situation is secure, either personally or through your partner, a life partner. The reasons could be different, but the point where I think in my case, I felt this is it, was when I had to cut off everything else I was doing. And this was the only thing that I would do. And only at that point, I could actually attract the right team and I could take it to the next level. Till then, it was almost like a hobby. I was learning a lot. I was, failing, building teams, doing something. But the company completely became serious and became a real venture where people started putting in hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital only when you show that level of commitment. And it's a very deeply personal decision. That's the reason why I say it's an emotional thing. Some are very comfortable starting it with nothing, with nothing in the bank. But in my case, I had to build a reasonable balance before I could take that plunge. But once I did, there was no going back. At least that's exactly what I had to do, and that's what motivated me.
Yeah, I would echo what Uday is saying with a bit of a more nuance too. It depends on what kind of company and startup you're trying to launch. If you're doing a consulting service, or you might be able to moonlight and do that on your free time. But I do agree that if you're starting to get traction and want to get investors and want to get employees to join you, you've got to be all in. They want to see that you have skin in the game and that your paycheck, your livelihood is on the line. But there are ways, if you're just starting out, to de-risk that by doing some proof of concepts if you're developing a product or developing a service, trying to just do some things to see if there's a demand that supports your market assumptions. I had a student founder that I was coaching this past spring. I mean, he was like, he was a Wemba, and then he was also a full-time job, plus he was doing a startup. And I was like, dude, at some point you're gonna have to choose, and he managed to go all the way through with that, but it's tough, and if he knows this, at some point, if his startup is successful, he's gonna go all in with that, but he needed to do some things to show that there was a market for his product, and so I applaud that. I mean, I think there is a real, need to make sure you meet your obligations to yourself, to your family, financially, before you embark on this, because it's a high risk game. You could lose it all. So it's right to be cautious at the beginning, but at some point you got to take the plunge and jump in.
Thank you. I appreciate those perspectives.
Wonderful. Well, Tolu, Giles, Uday, I just want to thank you again for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today. Would everyone join me? Thank you. We very much appreciate that. Would the three of you be open, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, would you be open to sharing an email address? I can do this on your behalf, of course, if you're open to it, or LinkedIn or anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Sure.
no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
We've had almost 20 interns from Duke so far over the last 3 years. So we've had a deep relationship with students doing MSc mentored study programs, and so many different reasons why they wanted to work with us. Very welcome. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much again, and we will be in touch with you soon. Have a good rest of your Saturday and weekend. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Okay, for just a moment, folks, just a moment. Excuse me, guys. Now, for those who are watching the live stream, we are going to discontinue the live stream now. You should have a Zoom link, but I'm going to put that into the, hold on, let's see. I'm going to put that into the chat the comments on the YouTube there, just so that you can grab that if you need it. So just a minute before we discontinue, and then Jamie's going to come up and get us going with the lemons to lemonade exercise. Let's see if this works. All right, if you're on the live stream, you should have that up now. We are into Zoom. So if you're...
Okay, just check it out. I didn't know. I was like, get ready for the performance and you're leaving, so.
All right, let's see if you can get back in here in 5 minutes.